No, everyone keeps asking, everyone's like, and I'm like, literally, she doesn't even know. Like, it's just like a day by day legit type of thing. And so, yeah, she's close, but like, you also have to remember, like, she could be playing if it wasn't in the WNBA by now, but like at this level, with how deep and like how good people are nowadays in our league, which is the best it's ever been, like you can't just be good. You have to be on top of your game. And so just trying to get her back in game shape, I think, is what they're trying to do. But like, again, it's literally a day by day. I'm not holding out any information.
We got Sophie the Trophy, one half of the Blonde Bombers, coming out and exposing her truth with this Bria Hartley situation, and she's also letting it be known the behind the scenes and what's really going on with Caitlin Clark's injury.
Sophie Cunningham just lit the fuse on the biggest story the WNBA has seen all season. Not with trash talk about refs or rival players, but with a truth bomb that's shaking the league from the inside out. And this time, it's all about Caitlin Clark, her injury, and whether the brightest star in women's basketball even wants to stick around anymore, because Sophie didn't just hint at frustration. She openly suggested that Caitlin's time in the WNBA might be way shorter than anyone ever imagined. And now the question isn't if fans can handle it, but whether the league itself could even survive losing the one player keeping every arena sold out and every camera locked in. And the fact that this warning came from Sophie, the blonde bomber herself, turns this from gossip into a very real alarm bell that has fans, coaches, and executives in full-blown panic mode. From the very start, it's been obvious that Caitlin Clark isn't just another player. She's the heartbeat of the entire league, the one who flipped WNBA arenas from half-empty to standing room only. But instead of protecting her like the priceless star she is, the league has let every game turn into a battlefield where she's hacked, shoved, and fouled like it's open season. And the craziest part is that everyone acts shocked when someone like Sophie Cunningham finally says out loud what fans have been screaming for months, that this constant punishment is unsustainable and that Caitlin might actually decide she's had enough. And let's be real, if the WNBA keeps treating her like a punching bag instead of the face of the sport, the idea of her walking away isn't some wild rumor. It's a reality that could come crashing down faster than anyone expects. And Sophie didn't just stop at warning fans. She straight up admitted that even Caitlin herself might not know when she's coming back. The official language says day by day, but everybody knows day by day quickly turns into week by week. And before you realize it, the whole season is gone. And fans don't need a medical degree to recognize when something doesn't add up. Because if this injury was being handled anywhere else, Caitlin would probably already be back on the floor. But in the WNBA, where every matchup feels more like rugby than basketball, she's forced to strap on layers of armor just to survive. And ironically, it's that same armor and constant punishment that made things worse in the first place. So now, instead of highlight reels, we're stuck with vague injury reports, confusion, and whispers about whether the biggest name in women's sports is even going to finish out the year. But here's where it really gets explosive, because Sophie dropped the kind of line that cuts deep, saying Caitlin could probably already be playing if it wasn't for the WNBA. And when you break that down, it's brutal, because what she's really saying is, in another league, in another environment, Caitlin would already be dominating again. But here, she's stuck in a system with inconsistent refereeing, physical abuse that goes unchecked, and politics that make middle school drama look organized. And instead of celebrating the fact that Caitlin sells out every arena she touches, we're left sitting here wondering if she'll even want to come back next year. And that dagger of truth from Sophie is exactly why fans are starting to panic, because they know it's not just an injury story anymore. It's a question of whether the league itself is breaking the very star that put it on the map. And here's the part that really stings. Sophie has been fined so many times, she's practically a walking ATM for the league, yet she's still the one bold enough to point out what everyone else is too scared to say, that Caitlin's situation is not sustainable, and that the WNBA is daring its biggest star to quit, while at the same time, you've got double standards playing out in plain sight, with certain players getting every soft whistle, while Caitlin gets shoved, hacked, and even penalized for daring to speak up. And when that kind of treatment lines up with the player carrying the entire sport on her back, Fans can't help but wonder if the targeting is personal and if Caitlyn is quietly asking herself why she should keep putting her body and her future on the line for a league that doesn't seem to protect her. What really made jaws drop is when Sophie suggested that in another league, Caitlyn would already be playing again. And think about how wild that is, because it's basically saying the WNBA is the problem, not the injury. The talent gap is brutal, the refs are inconsistent, and the politics feel more like high school drama than professional sports. So instead of celebrating the fact that Caitlyn sells out every single arena she steps into, we're left questioning if she'll even play this season, or worse, if she'll even want to come back at all. And that's a dagger to the league because no star in history has lifted women's basketball the way Caitlyn has, and yet, somehow, she's the one being dragged down by it. Because let's be brutally honest, Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA. The WNBA desperately needs Caitlin Clark. Every spike in ticket sales, every surge in television ratings, every merch drop that sells out in minutes, all of it ties back to her. And without her, the hype evaporates overnight, leaving half-empty arenas and a league scrambling for relevance again. She's the reason casual fans tune in, the reason national outlets suddenly care, and the reason sponsors are writing bigger checks than ever. Yet, instead of treating her like the centerpiece she is, the league has put her in a position where Sophie Cunningham is practically warning that Caitlyn might decide to take her talents elsewhere. And if that day ever comes, it won't just be a star leaving. It'll be an earthquake that shakes the entire foundation of women's basketball. And Sophie made it crystal clear by pointing to the double standard everybody sees, but nobody in the league office wants to admit, because when Paige Buchers gets touched, it's an instant whistle. Yet when Caitlin Clark gets shoved into the floor, she's expected to just shake it off. And that kind of bias doesn't just frustrate fans, it exposes how selective the WNBA really is and who it protects. Sophie can't even mention names without catching a fine, while other players can openly trash Caitlyn without consequence. And that's not enforcement, that's targeting. So when Sophie finally says what's been obvious for months, that Caitlyn's treatment is personal and her future in the league is shaky, it hits different because it's no longer a rumor. It's the truth coming straight from a player living it every single night. And this is where the conversation gets even scarier for the league, because Caitlin Clark isn't trapped. She has options that most players could only dream of. She could pack her bags tomorrow and dominate Europe, where the money is bigger, the seasons are shorter, and the respect is actually there. She could reinvent herself in another sport like golf, where sponsors would line up to throw millions at her for simply showing up. Or she could lean fully into her brand and become a global superstar without taking another brutal hit in the paint. And any one of those choices would leave the WNBA reeling, because when your brightest star has more opportunities outside your league than inside it, you're already losing the battle. And Sophie saying it out loud just turned that quiet fear into a very real possibility. And fans aren't blind to what's happening. They see the refs bending for some players while hammering Caitlyn. They see Sophie getting fined for calling out favoritism while others skate free. They see vague injury updates that make no sense and a league PR machine trying to spin every controversy into nothing. But the truth is, they don't buy it anymore. They know the WNBA had a once-in-a-generation chance to grow with Caitlin Clark, and instead of protecting her, they've thrown her into a rigged game. And that's why talk about her leaving feels less like speculation and more like a warning shot. Because if she ever decides she's done, the league will collapse under the weight of its own mistakes. Sponsorships will vanish, ratings will crater, and fans won't blame Caitlyn one bit. They'll point straight at the WNBA and say, you fumbled the bag, you lost the future, and now all that's left is chaos. So now the question isn't whether Caitlin Clark is good enough, because she's already proven she's the best thing to ever happen to women's basketball. The real question is whether the WNBA is smart enough to keep her, because Sophie Cunningham just ripped the curtain back and exposed a truth fans can't ignore, that Caitlyn's future might not be in this league at all. And if that day ever comes when she decides Europe pays more, golf hurts less, or her brand is safer outside the chaos, the fallout won't just be a loss, it will be the biggest collapse in league history. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just a player, she's the engine that's been carrying the whole machine. And once that engine walks away, the ride is over. So tell me right now, do you think Caitlin Clark sticks it out and forces the league to finally change? Or does she shock everyone and walk away while she still has the power to control her own story?